On June 17th, 2008, the Boston Celtics were on top of the world. They had just defeated their arch rivals, the Los Angeles Lakers, in 6 games to become NBA champions. With Doc Rivers as their coach, along with their big three of Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, and Ray Allen, it seemed like the Celtics were on the path to creating a dynasty. However, the years to follow were far less successful. Despite different coaches and different players, the Celtics were unable to recreate that moment. Whether it was LeBron James or Jimmy Butler, they consistently fell short at the last hurdle. That is, until the 2024 season. So how did the Boston Celtics go over a decade without a title to becoming the most stacked team in the league? The Celtics are regarded as the most successful team in NBA history, holding the record for the most championships won and the most recorded wins of any NBA franchise. They have always had stars leading the team, from Bill Russell and Bob Cousy in the late 1950s, to Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, and Robert Parrish in the 1980s, to Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, and Ray Allen in the late 2000s, to now the dynamic duo of Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Yet, despite the successful history of the Celtics, their titles in the modern era have been years apart. After winning an NBA championship in 1986, fans would have to wait decades to lift another one. They won 3 titles in 5 years from 1981 to 1986, with their big three of Bird, McHale, and Parrish, but the team struggled through the 1990s and much of the early 2000s. Larry Bird retiring due to injuries and the aging of the team's other veteran stars forced coach Chris Ford into rebuilding mode. As a result, the next years were filled with disappointment. In the 1997 season, the Celtics lost a franchise record 67 games, setting an unwanted NBA record, winning only once against the other Atlantic Division teams and just 15 victories overall. It looked like the Celtics were doomed for years of mediocrity until the 1998 NBA draft. They selected Paul Pierce with the 10th overall pick, a college star who had been expected to be drafted much earlier. Pierce made an immediate impact in the 1999 season, averaging 19.5 points and being named the Rookie of the Month in February. The Celtics were still struggling as a team, but there was some hope among the organization now. They had a player who had superstar potential. Under new coach Jim O'Brien, Pierce began to mature and develop his game. He got better and better as he helped the Celtics rise in the standings. The Celtics had entered the 2002 season with low expectations, but thanks to Pierce, the Celtics surged to the top of the Atlantic Division ahead of the Philadelphia 76ers, who had just been in the NBA Finals. Despite all the odds, the Celtics had made it to the playoffs, and now they had to play the Sixers in the first round. The Celtics won a hard-fought 5-game series against the 76ers. Pierce scored 46 points in the series-clinching game at the Fleet Center. Although they lost in the Eastern Conference Final to the Nets in 6, that season was a reflection of the success that Paul Pierce could bring them. He just needed more help. In the next few years, the Celtics made moves to improve the team. They brought in Doc Rivers as a coach, traded for Ray Allen, and then made a massive trade to get superstar power forward Kevin Garnett from the Timberwolves. Now Pierce had more help as the Celtics recreated their first big three since the Larry Bird era. The team was now stacked. They went 66-16 in the 2008 regular season, a 42-game improvement over the previous season. They looked a little shaky in the beginning of the playoffs, needing 7 games to defeat the Hawks and another 7 to defeat the Cavaliers. But those games prepared them for the later rounds as they defeated the Pistons in just 6 games and then went on to defeat Kobe Bryant and the Lakers in 6 games as well in the final. Paul Pierce was named the Finals MVP, fitting given he was the piece that began the journey to the title. The next few seasons, however, were not as successful. In 2009, the Celtics finished with 62 wins, but lost to the Magic in the second round. Kevin Garnett being injured didn't help them. The next season, with a healthy Garnett, the Celtics made it back to the NBA Final, but this time they lost to the Lakers in 7. In 2011, they were defeated in 5 by a stacked Miami Heat team led by LeBron James. With the big three gone, the Celtics went into a rebuilding era. Pierce and Garnett were traded to the Nets. With the 3 future first-round picks the Celtics received, they began the start of a youth movement for the team. In the 2016 NBA draft, the Celtics used one of the picks from the trade to select Jaylen Brown. The next season, they drafted Jayson Tatum with the 3rd pick. This was the beginning of the Jays era for Boston. Along with these 2 talented youngsters, the Celtics also signed Gordon Hayward, then traded for Kyrie Irving from the Cavaliers. The squad looked stacked and ready to compete. Despite Hayward suffering a season-ending injury on opening night, the Celtics would go on a 16-game winning streak to start the season. They finished the year with a 55-27 record, getting the 2nd seed for the playoffs. Unfortunately, the Celtics had to deal with another injury, this time to star point guard Kyrie Irving. Despite their 2 new acquisitions being out for the playoffs though, the young Celtics defeated Milwaukee in the first round in 7 games, beat the 76ers in 5 in the next round, before losing to the Cavs in 7 in the conference final. final. The Celtics had been so close to getting back to the NBA final, only being stopped by a generational run from LeBron James. But the series had been an indicator of the potential this Celtics side had. Tatum had even dunked on LeBron James, showing that he was ready to compete at the top level already. With how well the youngsters played and Kyrie and Gordon Hayward coming back from injury, there was a lot of optimism for the 2019 season. After all, LeBron James was no longer on the Lakers, so they wouldn't have to face him until the actual finals. But the season was far from successful. The Celtics finished the season with a 49-33 record, finishing as the 4th seed. Analysts started questioning the team's performances and whether they could actually win a championship. Their doubts were proven right as the Celtics crashed out in 5 games in the second round against the Milwaukee Bucks. It was an ugly loss, made worse by the fact that superstar Kyrie Irving shot horrifically. After dropping 26 points on 12 for 21 shooting in the Celtics Game 1 win, Irving converted on just 30% of his shot attempts over the series' final 4 matches. The nightmarish performance was made worse by the fact that Irving's future at Boston was very much uncertain. He ended up leaving that summer in free agency after promising Celtic fans that he wanted to stay months before. In an effort to reinforce the point guard position now that Kyrie was gone, the Celtics signed Kemba Walker in a sign and trade with the Charlotte Hornets. Despite having to play in a bubble due to the pandemic, the 2020 Boston Celtics looked far superior to the version of the Celtics that we saw before. They played more as a team as they swept the Sixers in the first round, then beat the Raptors in a hard-fought 7-game series. After a 2019 season that was filled with drama and clash of egos between the rising youngsters and established players, the Celtics were once again back in the conference final. Unfortunately though, Boston fell short, losing to the Jimmy Butler-led Miami Heat team in 6. Despite the moves made by Ant, the Celtics still couldn't make it to the final. First LeBron James, and now Jimmy Butler. The next season didn't go better. Boston struggled with injuries in the 2020-2021 season, with Walker, Tatum, and Brown all missing games at different points in the season due to either injury or COVID-19. Boston could not automatically qualify for the playoffs and were sent to the play-in tournament where they defeated the Washington Wizards. In the playoffs though, they lost to the Brooklyn Nets in just 5 games. What's worse is that this was Kyrie Irving's Nets team. Boston fans were already incredibly angry at the way Kyrie had left, and now he had come in and eliminated them. The Nets, with Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving, had their own big 3, just like the Celtics used to have. Some felt it was a reminder that the Celtics simply didn't have enough weapons to become champions.
Boston just doesn't have enough weapons, but I'm just looking at them and I'm like, you got no shot.
It actually looked dark for the Celtics. There was a lot of discussion about trading either Brown or Tatum as the next move to improve the squad.
There's been chatter, there's been a contingent of people that have, in the media, fans, NBA Twitter, that have talked about breaking you guys up, trading one of you.
The discussions though did not amount to anything. The only move that Boston made was that Brad Stevens was changed from head coach to the president of basketball operations, replacing Danny Ainge. Stevens immediately started to make moves to improve the team. While Kemba had been more of a stable figure in the locker room than Kyrie, his performances were equally poor. Stevens traded Kemba and the 16th pick in the 2021 NBA draft and a 2025 second round pick in exchange for Horford, Moses Brown, and a 2023 second round pick. Then he brought in Ime Udoka as his own replacement as the head coach. Despite a shaky start, Ime turned around the Boston season, clinching the 2nd seed for the playoffs. His tough, no-nonsense approach was needed as both Brown and Tatum began to develop their game even more. He was direct with the players, and while his defensive adjustments took some time for the team to adapt to, they had become one of the very best teams in the league. The acquisition of Derek White in February was also a phenomenal move, as we will see later on. In the playoffs, Boston looked dominant. They swept the Nets in the first round, getting revenge from the season before. Tatum and Brown had completely outplayed Durant and Kyrie, silencing anybody who had wanted them split up in the summer before. In the next round, they beat the Bucks in 7 games, with Tatum this time going head-to-head with Giannis. Down 3-2 in the series, Tatum scored 46 points as he saved Boston from being eliminated. After defeating KD and now Giannis, Tatum was playing at a superstar level. Him and Brown continued to impress as they got revenge on yet another team that had beat them before, the Miami Heat. The Celtics had defeated the Heat in 7 games. After years of always falling short, the Celtics were back in the NBA Finals. It was their first Finals appearance since 2010. Things started off well, with the Celtics taking a 2-1 lead, but thanks to some dominant performances from Steph Curry, the Warriors came back to beat the Celtics in 6. The mood around the organization was positive though. After years of losing in the conference final, it was progress to make it to the NBA Final as the best team in the Eastern Conference. With more experience under the belts of Tatum and Brown, it was clear that the Celtics were only going to get better. But the start of the next season didn't start out as expected. In September, the Celtics suspended Udoka for the whole 2023 season for engaging in a proper intimate relationship with a female staffer. Assistant coach Joe Mazzulla was replaced as the interim head coach, but nobody knew what to expect. Due to his lack of experience, there was always doubt even when he was winning games. Mazzulla was named the team's permanent head coach after leading the Celtics to a league best 42-17 record starter at the NBA All-Star break. But in the playoffs, there was criticism around his rotation when the Celtics fell behind 3-2 against the 76ers. They ultimately came back, but he was on the hot seat, and it definitely wasn't helped by the fact that the Celtics found themselves down 3-0 against the 8th seed Miami Heat in the conference final. They battled their way back to a Game 7 thanks to a Derek White buzzer beater in Game 6, but the Heat ultimately prevented the comeback. That comeback, though, might have been the saving grace for Missoula. Losing in 7 looked a lot better than getting swept to a team that had barely made the playoffs. Brad Stevens had faith in Missoula's coaching, and it proved to be the right decision. Thanks to Missoula, some great offseason moves that saw the Celtics get Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis, and Jaylen Brown becoming even better, the Boston Celtics were the most dominant they had ever been in the 2024 season. They finished the regular season with the best record in the NBA, then breezed by every opponent, eventually defeating the Dallas Mavericks in 5 to win their 18th NBA championship. After a long-awaited 16 years, the Boston Celtics were champions, and they did it with the 2 players they had drafted, the 2 guys that people doubted could work together. Very similar model that helped the Celtics win back in 2008. Jaylen Brown was the finals MVP, and Jayson Tatum showed that he was a star that could do a little bit of everything on the court. The question now is, will Boston continue to dominate, or was that title a one-off like the one in 2008? Only time will tell. If you enjoyed this video, I am sure you'll love this one too. Check it out right here.